Welcome to the Leadership Puzzle. I'm your host, Jeff Lupinacci, co-founder of Evolve HR Solutions. In this project, we're taking a journey to uncover the mysteries of leadership with some of the world's most accomplished leaders. In each episode, we discover the distinct insight from each of these great leaders, enabling us to refine our leadership skills and become more effective leaders. Piece by piece, together, we will assemble the leadership puzzle.
The debate between management and leadership has gone on for nearly a century. And in this episode, we explore those differences with our guest, Ken Koo. Ken is the founding partner of Force Scaling, and Ken has an amazing career as a COO, multiple time CEO, serial entrepreneur. He is a social champion warrior and someone that you are really going to enjoy getting his leadership puzzle piece from. Ken, it is great to have you on the Leadership Puzzle today. I've been so excited and waiting for us to have this conversation.
Likewise, I know we've known each other for quite a few years now, probably going on a decade, and looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, it's been great. We were connected by a mutual friend, Doug Freeman, and so I want to shout out to Doug. I think he's up in Washington, D.C. now, and he introduced us where we actually you hired me to join you in a startup called the Bridge Alliance, and that was so much fun to learn about startups, but also see your leadership up close and personal.
Well, really appreciate that. Yeah, that was a really fun journey. The entrepreneurial part of my career seems like it's continues, right? Really passionate about that. And the company that we work together in is really interesting because there are more Fortune 500 companies in North Texas than any other region in the country, which is interesting, right? You would think Silicon Valley would be, or California in general, right, would probably have more, but it's pretty spread out and diverse within California, New York, etc. But interestingly, Dallas, Fort Worth is also a hub, and we have a very different looking startup community compared to other parts of the country. And there's this gap or chasm between the startup community and all the great things that they develop. And how that can be applicable into a corporate setting or a corporate environment. And there just wasn't anybody within our community here locally to kind of bridge that gap. It certainly has gotten a lot more sophisticated. You and I started that, worked together in that company probably 10, 12 years ago. So it looks very different today, but when we got started maybe 12 years ago, it looked very different.
Yeah, I know. It lasted a couple years, and it was a good run. Had you thought about maybe reigniting kind of the bones of what you started there? Because now with AI, you were dabbling in AI before it really kicked off, and have you thought about perhaps reigniting Bridge Alliance with leveraging the AI that's now out?
Yeah, it's a possibility. I think there's still some opportunity and role clarity within the ecosystem. But I feel like today enterprises that lean into startup activity is much more pervasive than it used to be. Let's just say 10 years ago or a dozen years ago. Those that lean in, especially here in the Dallas-Fort Worth community, like the Capital Ones of the world or the Toyotas of the world, are really truly leaning in now, where before it was really an unproven thought process. It was really engaged with startups and then inviting them in. It seems like there's still probably some sort of gaps. There always seems to be in the community, right, in the ecosystem. I'm sure there will be other opportunities moving forward in the future as well, especially when, as you mentioned, artificial intelligence, as well as the utilization of blockchain. I still think it's in its very infancy. People are still trying to figure out how to solve problems utilizing blockchain in their business.
Yeah, no, there's some there's some really interesting. I've talked to some folks that have been playing in the blockchain and where they're imagining that can go with things like certification, so that employers can validate and verify that, yes, I've been certified on this particular activity, and so there's definitely a lot more out there on the blockchain space than I think anyone's even thought about.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think,
cool.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I didn't really plan on jumping into some of the technology, but certainly we could probably spend an hour just on blockchain and AI. But I want to really dive into your journey, because you've had a really fascinating career. So much so that you're leading a company now. But I'd love to understand, kind of how did you get to where you are today, and just tell our audience a little bit about your journey, and how it paved the way for force scaling.
Sure. Well, it's been a really interesting journey. Coming out of school, I immediately went into management consulting with a small company out of Cleveland, and then matriculated to a larger company still in management consulting called Grant Thornton Management Consulting. So a lot of folks remember Grant Thornton, or still remember Grant Thornton today. But back then, when I joined it in the late 90s, this was the time when all the management consulting companies and the accounting companies started splitting apart.
Sure.
Accenture became a company, if you remember, Bearing Point, some of these other organizations.
From Arthur Andersen.
That's right. The conflicts between management consultants, auditing, and accounting became a real thing. I was lucky enough to be part of that process, where I learned about mergers and acquisitions, and after spending about a decade in management consulting, I decided to be an entrepreneur. I spent some time learning more about a lot of interesting companies during my journey as a management consultant. Saw a lot of organizations, from banks to retail to nonprofit organizations, and saw a large diversity in both technology work as well as project management work during that time. Innovation within the internet and the .com space, the digitalization of business models was a huge thing.
Yeah, for sure.
And then after I spent my time in management consulting, there's this joke as a consultant. There's a shelf life, because you're typically on the road and flying around the country, and after 9/11, life wasn't the same anymore, right?
Sure.
Our lives changed dramatically. A traveling occupation was not nearly as fun as it was before 9/11. The world has changed, the country has changed, and I decided at that point in time to step aside from management consulting. And my first foray into entrepreneurship, I joined a small legal software company that eventually sold to Wolters Kluwer, and was part of that team, and cut my teeth in entrepreneurship and learned about how a small business works with the owner operators and a fantastic team there. And then over time, the last 15 years or so of my career remained an entrepreneur. I had to go back, take a look back at how many companies that I was either a part owner of or participated in, and it's been really interesting ride. I was part of at least 6 different companies.
Wow.
During that stint. So I guess I'm a serial entrepreneur at this point, you could call that. And I also did a brief stint at a nonprofit as well. So got some experience as inside a nonprofit here in Fort Worth, and that was also really interesting, and worked on that management team as well. So it's been a really interesting journey, and how we got to force scaling is also another interesting story. So in January of 2020, the year of COVID, it was really a daunting thing for a lot of us. We had some challenges, health challenges in our family, and I had to unfortunately leave the nonprofit that I was working with here in Fort Worth. It's called Catholic Charities of Fort Worth. I had to take some time off, and it just happened to coincidentally run at the same time as that was the COVID year. So I left in January of 2020, and saw what was happening through March when the governor shut down the state, and a lot of people were just in crisis management. And come the summer of 2020, I started getting a lot of inquiry from just folks within my network, right? People from Vistage or YPO or EO. As I've been in the Dallas-Fort Worth area for over 20 years now, and just understanding that community, a lot of owner-operators were just for help because they didn't really know what to do when the governor shut down the state. You have to remember, like, vaccines weren't a thing until fourth quarter of 2020. I was not vaccinated until Q1 of 21 because they're not eligible. We were not eligible for them, right? Unless we had a pre-existing condition or we're 65 or older. You couldn't get it in 2020, but we didn't know in the moment that we were in how long that was going to take, right?
Right.
And when the governor shut down the state and all these businesses were effectively shut down, people were freaking out. And in the beginning, we started just crisis managing 5 projects. It was just project work at that point in time, helping these owner operators navigate through shutting down their business, having strategic conversations with them on next steps and laying out a plan on what to do if we don't reopen. Hey, when government programs became available like PPP and EIDL, they've never had an SBA loan. They've outsourced everything. We outsourced accounting, we outsourced payroll, we outsourced legal. I don't know what to do here. I've never gotten a loan in my life, in my business. Getting them through that crisis management was really the foundation for scaling. After we took on about 5 clients at the end of the year, we decided, hey, I think it's time to form a company. These companies decided to keep us and said, you know so much about our business at this point. Could you just run them for us?
Oh, that's
great. Myself and my business partner, Paul Boyd, at that point in time, I think we better start a company because this is becoming a real thing. And, 4 years later, we've serviced over 40 clients, have done over 60 projects, and really enjoy what we do.
Yeah, no. Oh, that's and so you go in and you provide kind of CXO support, whatever these clients need. Is that kind of it?
Yeah, so primarily,
simplified, of course.
Simplified, yeah. Many owner-operators will look for an operator to run their business, right? So whether it's the title of COO, president, general manager, whatever it may be, we come in on a fractional basis to assist, typically 3 to 4 days a week with our experienced team. And it looks very different for every customer, right? So, of course, we want to have a conversation with our clients to see what the best fit is. We have also taken fractional CEO positions as well. So it really depends on what the business needs. We've also worked with private equity companies after they acquire an organization and they have not hired their full-time operator, that we could come in and basically fill in on an interim basis until they hire their permanent operator long-term. It works well for them after they've retired the former owner-operator. It's been a great model. It's been a great model for our clients, and it's been a great model for our talent, who typically are in the golden years of their career, right? And in terms of the season that they're in, and they want to stay sharp, they want to stay busy, but they don't want to commit to a 60 or 80 hour work week anymore. I only want to work 3 days a week. Is that something that we can do? And as we know, like the boomer generation and that population and where it's going, these folks, there's a tremendous amount of talent and volume in that aging pool that can still add value to organizations if they desire to do so, and we give them an opportunity to do that.
Yeah. I mean, you got the boomers, but also the Gen Xers, the early Gen Xers, I guess, or the later Gen Xers, depending on which way you're looking.
Mm-hmm.
They've hit that 55, and they're like, I've had my corporate career. I want to do some fractional stuff and stay in the game, but I don't need the politics and the those long work weeks. So that's great. That's great. Kind of speaking of generations, these new the X and not the X, but the Zs and the millennials and probably the alphas behind them, much more around the social causes and everything. And when you and I worked together, we were dabbling in the social enterprise space. And how do you make that work? I mean, you believed in it so much so that you went to work for Catholic Charities of Fort Worth and led their social enterprise division for a while. But that was a few years ago. Has your perspective changed today on that ability to merge, kind of the social cause with, making money and profit for investors and whatnot? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't think my thoughts have changed on that. In that, I believe every business can be a social business.
Sure.
It's a matter of how we operate and set up the company in terms of the long-term vision and the values of the organization. I believe in a world of abundance. When many individuals, kind of thrive in the land of scarcity, right? And a win-loss situation, right? They don't think in a win-win situation. But I truly believe that in the land of abundance and in a land of creation, which is where we reside, right? We live in a society where we can create, right?
Yeah.
We can create these winning formulas for profit as well as for social good simultaneously. I don't think that they're mutually exclusive. Yeah. And as an organization grows, a nonprofit is just a taxation status.
Right.
Right. They have revenue. They just happen to comply with spending almost all of it before the end of the year, right?
Right.
Versus a for-profit, yes, there are fiduciary responsibilities of that organization to the shareholders, right? But if the shareholders and the organization effectively believes in a social cause that they want to tackle, they can be successful with that as well as meet their mission of the social cause. I point out a company like a Patagonia, which is an excellent example of, can they be commercially successful? Obviously they are. Can they be socially conscious and still provide a business that continues to function over a long duration of time that creates a social impact? Absolutely they can, right? So that's one of the reasons why I believe in the model, and I still continue to believe in that model today.
No, that's great. I love the terminology used in terms of abundance. I think so many people think in terms of a lax or a scarcity mindset, where if I take a piece for me, it means that you don't get. I take a piece away from you, whereas this abundance is, there's plenty for you and I, and you know what? A bunch of other people too. We just need to be thinking about it as there's more than enough to go around. And gosh, I think if more people had that, we'd actually be better off as a planet.
Pro tip, right? Like whenever I hear the term share of wallet, that really bothers me. That means you're defining a fixed size wallet and you have to get a share of that wallet. I'm like, what if we're able to think outside the box and increase the size of that pie? Why do we have to get a share of wallet?
Right. Let's change the wallet and just make it, much bigger.
That's right. Make it much bigger.
Yeah. And then we'll just throw it on blockchain so everyone can track it.
There you go.
All right. So you work with a lot of CEOs, owner-operators. Is there one or two characteristics that are constantly being looked for, or kind of said in other ways, where it's the biggest gaps that are needed for leaders to step in, and if they have these particular skills, then boy, they really help organizations transform.
Yeah, I think two that come to mind is the ability to establish a vision for the organization, to inspire a culture within the organization, is huge. And I've seen that missing in several businesses, right? And it doesn't matter if you're manufacturing XYZ or you're in the professional services business. Having a vision bigger than a return for the shareholder is absolutely necessary.
Sure.
Right? People don't get up to work every day. Oh boy, I can't wait to add another penny to the share price today. Let me show up for work and bang out 16 hours of work. Right? That's not what motivates them.
Yeah.
Lead the organization to a place where it aligns with some sort of a vision that is bigger than the result, right, of a monetary benefit. Is huge. A lot of people go to work every day not knowing what the mission is of this company or what the vision is of this company or a nonprofit. They don't.
Yeah.
Sometimes we help organizations shape that vision, right? If they don't know, because they feel like, they're in the commoditized business of some sort, right? Like, hey, I'm in the brick selling business. I sell a brick.
Right.
Therefore, they don't have a vision for the company of what they want that company to be or where they want to go, because they sell a thing, right? And it's really challenging, but it's absolutely necessary to develop that for a company so that you know where you're going, and the rest of the team knows where they're going, and they're all inspired to move in that same direction with you. And I would say the other one is a culture of accountability. Is huge, especially for small and medium-sized businesses. What we've been seeing a lot as we enter these organizations, and this is not a criticism of this type of management, right? But what we've seen a lot is this a culture of loyalty versus a culture of accountability. So I didn't come up with this, right? I think this came out of one of Nick Saban's books. He's written so many books, right? Whatever you think of Nick, the head coach, the former head coach of Alabama.
Head coach, yeah.
You may not like who he is as a person, right? Or all the other things that come with Nick Saban in terms of who he is in terms of his personality, but his results speak for themselves, first of all, right?
For sure. For sure.
Yeah. Nick built, and what he wrote is a culture of accountability. When he joined Alabama, he recognized that the previous coach created a culture of loyalty, which is, it really doesn't matter what the results are. Jeff, you've been with me for a decade. I'm going to hang with you. Right? Even if you're not producing results, in this culture of accountability versus culture of loyalty. And we see that a lot in business, right? Well, Jane Doe has been here for 12 years, so why would we make a change? Well, is she doing what she needs to do to be held accountable to contribute to the winning of the team? If she's not, then we need to have a conversation. Well, it doesn't matter. She's been here for so long. So what kind of culture are you building? We like cultures of accountability. Right, especially if you have a long-term goal or a long-term vision to help you get there.
Yep.
Nick's vision is to win national championships. And if you're not contributing to winning national championships, you're going to be held accountable to it, himself included.
Yep.
And he delivered results.
Yeah. Yeah, he sure did.
So, yeah.
No, those are great. I know a lot of companies. This accountability mindset is so important, and it seems to be lacking for so many people. Oh, you missed your target for the month. Well, that's okay. We'll get it next month. Okay. Well, how many months do you have to miss your goals before someone actually does something about it?
Yeah. Yeah. I think I like to use sports analogies a lot because there's a clear path in terms of accountability when it comes to building a team. If kickers are not making kicks, helping win games, if quarterbacks are not throwing touchdowns, if running backs are not running for touchdowns and gaining yards, if those people are not held accountable and everybody does their job, they don't win, right? It's very obvious.
Right.
You can't quite tell that in a lot of businesses of winning versus not winning or being on plan versus off plan, right?
Yeah.
That culture of accountability is important. Otherwise, your business will just go nowhere, right? Basically, you're in a lifestyle business that will just be acceptable if you do not have a culture of accountability. No,
that's good. That's really good. Thanks. Well, we've talked a lot about your journey, and you've got a huge amount of wisdom in working with other CEOs and CXOs. But I want to start digging into your leadership puzzle, because you have some great leadership attributes, and so part of your role in force scaling is parachuting in, helping these companies really get to that next level of performance. What leadership trait do you think is necessary for you to be able to do that effectively? Or, I guess it could be any consultant to be effective at it, but, really what is it that you do that allows you to be successful wherever you're going in?
I think for me, the ability to simplify and clarify are superpowers that a lot of consultants or maybe leaders don't have, right? We almost take it for granted, like what do you mean simplify? Like, I make things simple. Well, we've seen examples of what I'll call the opposite, right? The complicate, right?
Yeah.
Something that takes 59 steps to complete. I have a standard operating procedure just to do some task, right? Let's just say.
Right.
The ability to provide that clarity and that simplification is super important within organizations because complexity kills growth, right? The more complexity you have, the more difficult you make it for the people, the human beings that are in it, the more difficult it is for them to progress, right? And grow with the organization. So I think those two things are super important. A lot of people don't understand the difference between leading and managing, right? And that comes down to clarity, right? This is why I said clarity is so important. I'm asking you to manage a process or manage a team is not the same as me asking you to lead a team, right? Managing is not the same as leadership and leading. Let's get those things correct. Let's be clear, right? And there's a lot of inefficiencies inside companies as well as misunderstandings because they don't know how to get clarity, and they also don't simplify. When you talk about an issue, it has 6 things clobbered inside the issue. Well, can we decompose this into more simple things that we need to talk about? And then also clarity. So many times I've heard the person's the problem, right? When something's not working right. Well, is it a person problem or is it a process problem or is it a technology problem? let's get clarity on what the issue is, because most of the time when we try to diagnose something is we just point to the person, right? And then when I hear things like, we've had 6 HR managers, right, in the last 4 years, or I've had 7 executive assistants in the last 3 years. Is it really a person problem? Like all 7 of those people failed, or all 5 of those people absolutely fell down? Or is there something wrong with us, right? Like something from a process, organizational structure. Like, let's get clarity on what the problem is, because we know the definition of insanity is trying the same thing over and over and over again with thinking that's the problem, right? So I think those two things are critical.
That's great. I mean, that is certainly one of the things I've always appreciated about you. You can look at a problem and you can distill it down into some really simple components, and then you're able to communicate that in a way that people understand. And I think that's definitely a leadership skill that you have that plays very well. Every leader, or almost every leader that I've talked to, has had some kind of aha moment in their career that kind of shaped their leadership. I mean, sometimes it's a failure, sometimes it's a dressing down by another leader. But do you have any kind of moment where you can point back, go, yeah, that was transformative for my leadership journey?
Absolutely. The story that I tell is, I won't name the company, right? Because I worked for several management consulting companies. Right? I was in a management consulting company, and I made a presentation to the board of directors. And as a high A, young, hard-charging individual, right, that someday wanted to make partner, I felt being right, integrity was the most important thing. And I came out of that board meeting and at a client, and the chairman of the board came up to me afterwards. He's like, Ken, you are the smartest guy in the room. But 2 things, right? Like, one, you don't have to always be the smartest guy in the room. And second, you don't always have to be right? Being right is not necessarily the most important thing, because you lost half the people in that room. You're technically correct, but the way that you delivered that message, you lost half the people in that room. If you do that again, right, you won't be on this team for very long. Right? I'm just like, okay, loud and clear, right? Like, so if I could go back 20 years and talk to myself when, I was in my 20s or 30s, I would give myself those very words of advice, which is, like, facts are great and getting right is important, right? But sometimes being right is not the only thing. How you deliver the message, how you engage with others, how you communicate with the team is just as important as the facts and the figures and the decisions.
Yeah. No, that's good. I know I deal with a lot of leaders and other younger folks coming up. They're right in what they're saying, but boy, how they say it just turns people off, or the message doesn't get heard. And that's great wisdom that you learned early enough that hopefully it was early enough that says, well, wait a second. I know the answer, but boy, let's say it in a way that I'm going to be heard and accepted and then acted upon versus turned off.
It's funny. It's almost like we got to go back to the days of finishing school, right? but we need to do it for young professionals, aspiring executives that doesn't have the professional carry, because the polish isn't there, right? Or they'll run over somebody in a meeting. Or they'll dress somebody down in public, or just some of these behaviors that we've seen or even done ourselves, right, in our younger years. How do we help them matriculate with more executive function? It's almost like we could build a finishing school for would-be executives, because they don't teach these things in school.
No. And these days, corporations are not given the same level of management or leadership training that you and I probably got in the 90s when we were, coming up in our career. I think I saw a statistic that only 30% of managers and leaders have had any kind of formal training in the workforce today. I mean, it's a staggering statistic to me. But you're right. It's a finishing school. It's how to lead people, manage people, deal with people effectively, so that work gets done, not make enemies. So,
Absolutely right.
That's great. So we've known each other for a number of years, and I've been worked for you, and I know the value that you place on people, and you actually have a high value for HR. And a lot of the audience are HR, are in the HR world. And so I'd love to hear your perspective, because I hear it all the time that HR doesn't have a seat at the table. And I was at a conference that I was speaking at a couple weeks ago, and I said, raise your hand if HR has a seat at the table. And like 20%, raised their hand. And I said, well, how many want a seat at the table? And, everybody's hand went up. It's like, oh my gosh, so in your experience, you're dealing with CEOs, and you've been a CEO. What do you think the biggest issue for HR leaders to actually be able to come in and earn that seat at the table? What do they need to be doing differently? And I know the audience would love to hear your take on that.
Yeah, I think there's a cultural shift that is happening, but it's happening way too slow. So my father was also an HR professional.
Oh, okay.
And he had a seat at the table because he dealt with the unions, right? So the risk was so great, right, for this organization that he works for, that he had to be at the table, right? Because he negotiated with the unions for, the management versus labor component, right?
Sure.
And at larger organizations, it's industry specific. So you may have somebody at HR at the table if they have that risk profile within their industry.
Right.
But overall, you're not wrong in that what we constantly see is the undervalue HR role within organizations from a leadership team representation perspective. And that's just too bad, right? Because it is changing, but it's changing really slowly. Again, my sports analogy is that the HR person is a key component of like the general manager role, putting together the team. And I don't think any executive or CEO or even the board at this point that I have met would say, we don't need a high functioning, excellent team. Right. Everybody will say you need one and you have to have one. And the fundamentals of building that team from a structure, as well as getting the right people in the right seats, it's absolutely necessary to have HR as part of that function, right?
Right.
So when I explain it in those terms to the boardroom or to private equity companies, they instantly understand, because that's the management that they're in all the time, which is, how do I put together excellent teams so that the company can win? Because they're just finance guys, right? PE guys are just financial guys. But they want to make sure the operating team versus the investment team or the board is functioning at a very high level so that they can take advantage of the asset they just acquired. They understand it very clearly. But owner-operators tend to struggle and see it as an expense. They don't see the team as the competitive advantage. Which is a really interesting thing. So when when we go into smaller businesses and medium-sized SMB businesses, and we explain this concept to the owner-operator, it takes a little while for it to sink in that HR is not a cost and just runs payroll and deals with employee relations, right? they are a critical part of the organizational construction, right? In terms of the development of the organization as well as the talent inside it to build an excellent team so that you can be competitive in your marketplace. And without that team, right, or when you see the dysfunctions within the team, the inefficiencies, I often challenge the CEOs, like, you've seen our issues on a weekly or daily basis inside the team.
Right.
If our team functions like this, and we know we grade ourselves working together, right? Like the point guard doesn't know what the center's doing or the power forward, right, and nobody knows what their role is. How can we compete with another team?
Oh, for sure.
Right?
Yeah.
We don't even know what positions we're playing, right? We have all this inefficiency amongst us, right? Whether it's culturally or organizationally structured wise, we don't either have the right playbook, right, the right positions or the right seats, and we got to have the players to fill those seats in order to go compete. Right now we are struggling just amongst ourselves. So I think to be able to communicate to the executive team that without an excellent team it doesn't work, right, and that includes all levels of the organization, then it clicks in. Oh, okay, I get it. Yeah, this is probably the language we need to start installing, right, with other HR professionals. Like, they deserve a seat at the table, and they need to be at the table because they're accountable for building excellent teams inside the organization as well as the team that they're on.
Yeah, I love that. I love that kind of mindset and picture of, okay, if HR is talking the language of business versus the language of HR, and I suspect it's also HR needs to understand how money is made and how the business makes money, as opposed to how to hire someone or pay someone, right? There's probably a different mindset shift for the HR leader to be able to figure out the team aspect. Is that right?
Yeah. I think that you need to have all the technical components as well as the ability to operate the business, and your main accountability is building an excellent team. Right.
Team.
Great. So the analog to that, to the CFO, is that the CFO needs to know how to do bookkeeping and blocking and tackling from an accounting, finance, tax perspective, of course. But the CFO also sees longer into the future of what can I contribute to the business to help the business grow, right? And that's my, money management is my industry, is my domain, right? Versus HR is the people.
Yeah. No, that's good. I like that. That'll be really helpful. Okay, great. So now we want to have a little bit of fun. This is going to be our lightning round, so I'm just gonna pelt you with some questions and have a little bit of fun with it. So, what is your favorite hobby when you're not working?
I would say playing golf, right? Somebody that's highly competitive, and it's one that you seem to never be able to master, at least for me. I really enjoy that. And it also gets me out of the office for 4 hours.
Yeah. Okay, well, the follow-up, what is your favorite golf course you've ever played?
Wow, favorite golf course I've ever played. I think up until this point is probably Dallas National Golf Club, which is right here in Dallas. Yeah, really enjoyable. And really had a great time there. Every time I go out there, it's a fantastic experience.
Oh, that's fantastic. All right, I know you mentioned this before, but if you had one superpower, what would it be?
Wow. Superpower. I would say probably ability to fly would be awesome.
Okay. Love it. Yeah, fly around the world.
Yeah, be able to just get from place to place. I think I've always had a fixation with flight. I grew up in Dayton, Ohio, home of the Wright brothers, so I've always had a fixation with flight and the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base being right there. I wanted to go into the Air Force Academy and be a pilot someday. but I didn't meet a lot of the physical conditions. They said my eyes were too bad, and I wasn't cut out to be a pilot. Would I like to be a mechanic? I said no. I don't. I want to fly jets.
That's great. All right, so I know you've done a lot of traveling. What's the best meal you've ever had in your life?
Best meal I've ever had. I would say one here in Dallas. The French Room is excellent. And I would say the second one would be Nobu in Las Vegas. Those are the two best meals I've ever had. Yeah.
All right. What's the most exciting place you've visited to or traveled to?
I really enjoyed Kauai. It's not the island that many people go to when they go to Hawaii in general, but Kauai is fantastic. The Kona coffee that they grow there, and just the culture of that place is a little bit different from the other islands. It's a little bit more laid back, a little bit more relaxing, a little more chill. I really enjoyed that experience. I'd definitely go back, make a return visit.
Yeah, what is that, the Konopali Coast, or beautiful. Great. Yeah. All right, so we're called the Leadership Puzzle, and so we like to hone in on the puzzle piece. What do you think your unique attribute or puzzle piece that you bring to a team is?
Wow, I'm gonna have to say grit, right? I don't give up easily. Steadfastness, staying the course. Some people may call it stubbornness, and to a fault sometimes. But if I believe in something, I'm going to continue to blaze the trail on that. And if I'm wrong, I'll learn that I'm wrong, and then I'll deviate and course correct. But I think this decisiveness, right, is also something that I've seen that some leaders don't have, right? They tend to they tend to add new things. They feel like they need to tinker, right, or add or change things all the time. They'll attend the conference and learn something new, or read a book, and then the next day the rest of the company has to go do it, right? Mentality. Staying the course, I think, is super important. So I think of things with a much longer mindset. So that determination, that grit, just stay the course, right? I know we can do it.
Cool. Oh, great. All right. Well, I just have one more question, and I love to give our guests an opportunity to tell the listeners about a cause or an organization that's really important to them. And so, what about you, Ken? Anything that you'd like to tell our listeners about that's really important to you?
Yeah, I recently got the opportunity to meet the folks at Key School of Fort Worth, right? It is a local K-12 school here. It is a school that's focused on individuals that have learning challenges. They focus primarily on individuals that may have been diagnosed with dyslexia. And it's a fantastic school, and it is a real gem in the community and what they're doing for those students and those young people. And if you want to learn more about it, go to ks.org.
Oh, great. All right. KSFW. So Key School Fort Worth.
Schoolfortworth.org.
All right. .org. All right. Well, thank you, Ken. That's amazing. Go check that out. Well, Ken, I have so enjoyed my conversation with you, as I knew that I would. Thank you for spending time with us and sharing some great insights.
Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it. Thanks for the time.
Thank you for joining us on the Leadership Puzzle. We enjoyed having Ken Koo on the program. Join us next time when we have Wendy Koch, best-selling author of Making Flex Work and the CEO of Engineering Leadership Solutions. We encourage you to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast, and leave your comments. We'd love to hear what you think. We'll see you next time.